This is Ross Feingold on the Taiwan Hashtag program, coming to you from Taipei, Taiwan, hosted by Storm Media. Today we'll be talking about the challenges faced by food delivery platforms, UberEats and foodpanda. They have been in the news in recent days. They are the target of the government seeking to impose increased regulation. Regulation. Well, my own beliefs is we should let these platforms operate and be available to consumers in Taiwan, whether it's the food delivery or the taxi service. So don't call it a taxi service. So that's a good reminder of the troubles that Uber has previously had in Taiwan. Originally, when Uber was operating in Taiwan, taxi drivers took to the streets in protest. They complained to the government. They said, just like in other countries, Uber is operating a taxi service without a taxi license. Uber said, we are not a taxi service. We are a platform technology platform provider. After lots of back and forth, Uber left Taiwan briefly because the government was trying to impose a regulatory structure that Uber cannot operate under. Uber then came back. They thought their regulatory challenges had been addressed. The new structure that Uber returned under had Uber entering into relationships with car leasing companies, or the drivers, we should say, had a relationship with the car leasing companies. They would lease their cars from the leasing companies and then continue to offer the Uber service via the platform that us as consumers, as Uber users, are familiar with. So from the user perspective, no difference, even though in the background there was a relationship between the driver and the car leasing companies. Taxi drivers did not like this either. They complained to the government, and the government took the side of the taxi drivers, not the Uber drivers and not us, the Uber users. Imposed a new regulatory structure, and Uber was possibly going to leave Taiwan, but eventually Uber has made some concessions. They will be operating under a new regulatory structure, which will require all of the Uber drivers to have a license, not the same yellow taxi driver license, but a similar license. So we have about 10,000 Uber drivers in Taiwan who are going to need to take this test in the coming months. The government has agreed not to impose the fines right away, but if they don't have that license, they will be fined. Uber is pledging that us as the users won't see any change to the user experience. This remains to be seen in the coming weeks and months as this is implemented. And that brings us to the food delivery platform service, UberEats, foodpanda. Again, very popular here in Taipei and in other parts of Taiwan where the service is offered. Unfortunately, in recent days, there were 2 accidents involving delivery men working for these services passed away due to accidents on the road. Of course, our condolences go out to the family and friends of those who passed away due to a road accident while delivering food to customers. And then this reopened up a significant issue. Are they employees? Are they contractors? Why is that significant here in Taiwan? Well, employees, as in many other countries, Taiwan having a very social, kind of social democratic perspective on public policy, very much like Western European countries, unlike the United States. Taiwan has significant regulatory requirements for full-time employees, such as payment into the health insurance system. We have national health insurance here in Taiwan. Labor insurance, other types of accident insurance. These employees apparently were not covered. Why weren't they covered? Because the companies said, look, they're independent contractors. Again, that's the perspective or the approach that these companies understandably would take all over the world, and that is how their services have been able to grow and thrive and gain such popularity and, frankly, keep the cost down, keep the service fee down, because the companies don't have to pay the same costs that are associated with having full-time employees. This is the very nature of the sharing economy. Everybody gets it. You know who else gets it? The people who go to work for those platforms. So people who agree to deliver food for these platforms are obviously aware when they agree to take it on or to accept the delivery assignments, they agree to the terms and conditions. Are those terms and conditions legal here in Taiwan? Well, that's going to be an argument in the coming days and weeks as the government seeks to impose new regulation. Very interesting, of course. Nobody was unaware. Everybody was aware that the companies treated the delivery drivers as independent contractors, that they were not treated as full-time employees. No secret. So it was no secret that the companies, the platform providers, did not provide these types of insurance. There were no co-payments that they would normally make for full-time employees. No surprise by the company, by the people working there, delivering the food as independent contractors, and no surprise for government regulators. But what happens? Someone dies, and then the government comes in and says, oh my gosh, you are violating the law, or we're going to quickly write new regulations to require you to provide these types of insurance payments for the drivers, so in case there is an accident, that the drivers do get some coverage. Now look, we all have sympathy for them, but again, they took this on knowing that they were not covered. Fortunately, this happens rarely, but it did happen that there was an accident, and then it's in the news. And so the government, they're all over this. Why are they all over this? Well, look, we have an election coming up in 3 months. It's no secret. January 11, 2020. There is a legislative election, the presidential election. So politicians, candidates for the legislature, the legislative yuan, from both the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, has a majority in the legislative yuan, Kuomintang, KMT, which is the second largest party, the largest opposition party, smaller parties. Most of them, again, they tend to have a pro-regulatory view on these things. They take the side of the common person. They take the side of over-regulation. There's nobody saying, let's let the companies operate with a minimal amount of regulation. That's what allows these companies to thrive, allows them to provide a quality, low-cost service. So we don't see any politicians taking that view. In fact, we see the politicians racing. They're racing as fast as, or going as fast as a food delivery or a car driver to come up with new ideas, impose new requirements on these companies, on UberEats, on foodpanda, and other similar services. So what do they want to do? They want to bring the delivery people within the scope of full-time employees. They want to require the companies to pay more money as far as insurance payments. This will probably raise the cost for consumers like us who use these services in Taiwan. If you think that the employees should be entitled to this kind of insurance, then you won't mind paying the higher fees. There is a big risk here, which is that if the companies pass on these fees to the consumers, which is inevitably what will happen, that people won't use these services because, at least in Taiwan's largest cities, like here in downtown Taipei, very convenient to just walk outside your office or home and buy food. Not only are there convenience stores, but there are restaurants in easy walking distance of most places within Taiwan's urban areas. In fact, I asked the crew here filming this episode of Taiwan Hashtag if they use these platforms, and they said no, or very rarely, because they could just walk outside and buy the food. So if these fees are passed on to the consumers, there's a high risk that there may be some leakage of customers. They'll just walk out and buy food. They won't order from the platforms. And the result will be that the delivery people who we're trying to protect with increased regulation will actually lose their jobs. So there's a big risk there, and the government needs to manage that. But it seems as of now, the government is taking the side of the common person, the delivery person. They're not taking the side of the consumer, and they're certainly not taking the side of the companies. And again, this was very similar to what we saw with Uber's car service, where the government decided we got to take the side of the taxi drivers. The taxi drivers are suffering. They're voters, even though the Uber drivers are also voters and the Uber users are also voters. All of this shows, again, a tendency to take an over-regulatory, a big government approach to these things here in Taiwan. Again, it's not a Kuomintang or a DPP issue. It's across all political parties where they have that view. However, it does run counter to some of the goals of the current government. They want Taiwan to be a center for innovation. They want Taiwan to be a center for startup ideas. There are a lot of government policies seeking to achieve that. They even created something called the Asian Silicon Valley in northern Taiwan with what was supposed to be relaxed regulatory infrastructure, so that it would be easier for companies to engage in these kinds of startup ideas. Taiwan is great with hardware. It has been for the last 40 years, starting from calculators and then to computers, laptop devices, panels, camera lenses, mobile devices. You name it, they make it here in Taiwan. Taiwan has not been as strong with software or in the online space, or even with cashless payments. Why? Over-regulation. These things tend to happen in Taiwan slowly. Go ask Samsung or Apple Pay. Their services took a long time to roll out here in Taiwan, probably because of over-regulation and a very difficult regulatory environment to navigate. And again, we just saw this with Uber, with the car service, and now we're seeing it with the food delivery service as well. Again, tough to balance these things, the needs of the public, the consumers, the desire of drivers, delivery men to have work, the profit-seeking goals of the platform providers, and fairness to other food establishments that might have a higher cost base because they have to rent stores or they have to hire their own delivery people. That's why they started to participate or cooperate with foodpanda and Uber Eats. Key things here. Popular services, we should not over-regulate them, but that seems to be the tendency. And it will make for good politics, though. For the smart politicians, then they're going to take the safe way out. They're going to vote for or pursue more regulation. But we'll be watching in the coming weeks and months how this plays out, how the new regulations impact the delivery services, and if they'll have the similar challenges that occurred with the car service with the Uber drivers probably will happen to Uber Eats and foodpanda. So you guys got to watch out. I'm Ross Feingold, and you've been watching Taiwan Hashtag on Storm Media.